Ladies and gentlemen, there are times in life when clarity comes not through comfort, but confrontation. When the truth isn't gentle, but necessary. And if you're a man trying to navigate the complexity of modern relationships, you need to know when to stand your ground and when to walk away. So listen carefully. If a woman tells you these 5 things, you don't argue, you don't negotiate, you walk away. Not because you're weak, but because your integrity depends on it. When a woman says, "I don't need a man," it may sound like a declaration of strength and independence. In some contexts, perhaps it is. But in the intimate sphere of relationships, that statement often carries a deeper meaning, one rooted in defensiveness, disillusionment, and often unprocessed emotional history. What's important to understand here is not just the words, but the mindset behind them. This isn't simply a celebration of self-sufficiency. It's a preemptive rejection of male presence, male contribution, and ultimately male value in her life. And that's a problem if you're looking to build something real. A healthy relationship doesn't depend on neediness. It depends on the willing interdependence of 2 autonomous individuals. It's not about clinging to one another out of fear or loneliness. It's about choosing day after day to collaborate, to share burdens, to trust each other enough to lean in. So when someone declares that they don't need anyone, particularly in a romantic context, they're effectively saying, "I'm not open to building anything with you unless it aligns perfectly with my pre-existing reality." That shuts the door to negotiation, compromise, and the organic give and take that intimacy demands. What's more troubling is that this phrase often comes with a subtle undercurrent of hostility. It reflects a worldview in which men are, at best, optional accessories, and at worst, threats to be managed or avoided. That hostility may come from past experiences, painful ones, no doubt, but the presence of wounds doesn't justify projecting them onto others. A man entering a relationship with such a woman won't be seen as a partner. He'll be viewed with suspicion, as someone who must prove his worth repeatedly without ever being fully trusted. And let's be honest, when you're told outright that you're not needed, you will eventually be treated as if you're disposable. That's not a partnership, that's a precarious arrangement held together by conditional acceptance. No matter how committed or emotionally available you are, your presence will always feel peripheral, not central. Your opinions will be met with resistance, your efforts scrutinized through a lens of skepticism. That environment suffocates a man's sense of purpose and undermines his ability to lead, contribute, and grow within the relationship. Furthermore, "I don't need a man" is often a shield, used to avoid the vulnerability that real connection requires. It's easier to declare independence than to admit a desire for companionship. But when someone isn't willing to be vulnerable, they cannot be intimate. And without intimacy, emotional, intellectual, spiritual, there is no real relationship, just a performance of one. You can't build a future with someone who has already decided they don't need you in it. You deserve to be with someone who welcomes your presence, values your strengths, and embraces the mutual dependency that real love requires, not someone who resents the very idea of it. "Take me as I am or not at all." It's a phrase often delivered with confidence, almost defiance, as if it represents the ultimate form of self-acceptance. On the surface, it sounds admirable, someone who knows who they are and refuses to pretend. But scratch just beneath that surface, and it reveals something far less empowering: a refusal to grow, a resistance to accountability, and a hardened unwillingness to change, even when change is necessary for the survival of a relationship. At the heart of every meaningful relationship lies the concept of mutual transformation. Love is not a static experience. It is dynamic, ever shifting, shaped by time, tension, and commitment. When someone demands to be accepted entirely as they are without openness to evolution, what they're really doing is asking for unconditional validation, regardless of how their behaviors or attitudes might impact the other person. This isn't self-love, it's emotional rigidity. And rigidity is the death of relational growth. No one is perfect. We all come into relationships carrying wounds, habits, and patterns that don't always serve us or our partners. The process of being in a relationship, a real one, involves the difficult and sometimes uncomfortable work of self-reflection. It's about realizing that the way we react, the way we speak, the way we handle conflict, those things matter. They affect the health of the bond. And when one partner flatly refuses to consider the impact of their behavior, the relationship becomes lopsided. One person is left doing the emotional labor while the other clings to the illusion that love means never having to change. This attitude often masks insecurity. It's easier to assert, "Take me as I am," than to admit fear of inadequacy or to confront personal flaws that require growth. But if that fear governs the dynamic, then intimacy becomes impossible. Intimacy isn't just about closeness, it's about honesty. It's about two people who are willing to look in the mirror and say, "For the sake of what we're building, I'll do better." When that willingness is missing, what's left is entitlement, a belief that love should be given without effort, commitment without compromise. And here's the dangerous irony. Those who demand acceptance without growth often expect their partners to change for them. They may criticize, correct, or even belittle, all while insulating themselves behind the shield of unchangeable identity. It becomes a one-way street where accountability is a burden only you have to bear. That's not strength. That's self-protection turned into stubbornness. And eventually, it drains the emotional energy of the relationship. The truth is, you don't get to opt out of becoming a better version of yourself when you choose to love someone. Love calls us higher, it challenges us. And while you should never lose your identity in a relationship, clinging to your flaws as if they define you is not self-respect, it's self-sabotage. And it leaves no room for real connection to thrive. When a woman says all men are the same, it's not just an opinion, it's a verdict. It tells you that before you've had the chance to be known, you've already been judged. This statement doesn't stem from a rational place of observation. It comes from pain, disappointment, and unhealed wounds that have been carried forward from one relationship to the next. And while hurt is human, projecting that hurt onto every man is both unfair and deeply destructive. They've lost the strings. This moment doesn't come with fireworks or grand gestures. It arrives in silence, like a shifting wind before the storm. You see, narcissists operate under a fundamental illusion that others exist merely as extensions of their will. They manipulate, twist reality, demand admiration, and punish independence because they fear it. Strength in others confronts them with a truth they can't bear to face, that they are not omnipotent, that the world is not made in their image. Now imagine the precise moment they recognize you're no longer playing the game. At first, they will deny it, attempting to pull the same levers, use the same tactics, guilt, charm, rage, but none of it works. You do not react. You remain composed, not because you are cruel or detached, but because you have built something stronger inside yourself, a sense of worth that is not for sale, not negotiable. They will panic. And here's the catch. This isn't about revenge. It's not about teaching them a lesson. It's about you walking away from the falsehood, from the cage you didn't realize you were in. It's about the quiet triumph of truth over manipulation, of grounded strength over desperate control. Because real power, true strength, doesn't need to scream. It doesn't need to dominate. It simply is. And when a narcissist sees that in you, something inside them crumbles. Not because you hurt them, but because you refused to let them define you. So what happens next? They may lash out. They may retreat. They may pretend you never mattered. But none of that is your concern anymore. The story moves on without them. You don't look back. Not because you hate them, but because you've finally remembered who you are. And that, my friends, is the beginning of something far more powerful than their illusion ever was: your freedom. Our narcissists thrive on control. This is the foundation of their psychological framework. To understand the significance of this, we have to look at how a narcissist sees the world. At the core, the narcissist is not someone who merely wants attention or admiration. They are someone who requires it in order to maintain a fragile, often artificial sense of self. They construct an identity that is propped up not by inner truth or integrity, but by external validation and dominance over others. Without this control, their internal structure begins to falter. Control becomes not a preference, but a necessity. In relationships, whether personal or professional, this need for control manifests in subtle but corrosive ways. At first, it may look like charm, charisma, or confidence. They might flatter, impress, and sweep people off their feet, but this is not generosity. It's a calculated tactic to hook someone into a dynamic where the narcissist is always at the center. Once they feel they've secured their role as the dominant figure, they begin to manipulate, isolating you from other sources of support, redefining your reality, making you question your own judgment, your emotions, your memory. This isn't accidental. It's the psychological equivalent of constructing a house where every door only leads back to them. Control for the narcissist is also rooted in fear. Deep down, there's an insecurity so intense, so well hidden that they dare not acknowledge it, even to themselves. They fear being irrelevant, being abandoned, being seen as ordinary. So they impose control as a defense mechanism by making others dependent, uncertain, and small. It isn't just about keeping you close, it's about keeping you beneath. That way, they never have to face the terrifying prospect of equality, because equality would mean giving up control. And giving up control would mean facing themselves without a mirror of superiority. This dynamic is especially insidious because it's not always violent or overt. In many cases, it's quiet, persistent, and psychological. They may say they love you, but their love is contingent, offered only when you comply, withdrawn when you challenge them. They may offer praise, but it's praise designed to reinforce your obedience, not your growth. Everything they give is transactional, and the currency is control. You are not loved for who you are used for what you give to their ego. What makes this dangerous is that it can feel normal over time. Victims of narcissistic control often begin to lose sight of their own values, their own voice. They begin to think that maybe they really are the problem, that their discomfort is a flaw, not a signal. This is how the narcissist thrives, by ensuring that their control becomes invisible, disguised as concern, love, or guidance. But make no mistake, behind every compliment is a hook, and behind every smile is the need to dominate the emotional terrain. They cannot simply exist alongside others. They must rule them. Control is their oxygen. Take it away, and everything begins to fall apart. Your strength threatens their illusion. A narcissist survives by constructing and maintaining a false self, a grandiose version of who they wish they were, free of flaws, always admired, always superior. This illusion is delicate, and it demands constant reinforcement from those around them. They curate relationships not for connection, but for control and reflection. You are meant to mirror their greatness, never question it, and certainly never surpass it. When you begin to display true inner strength, independence of thought, emotional resilience, firm boundaries, you pose a threat to that illusion. You expose the lie they live behind. This threat is not always obvious, nor does it provoke an immediate dramatic response, but it is deeply destabilizing to them. Your strength implies that they are not the center of your world. Worse, it implies that they never were. It confronts them with the possibility that you see through their facade, that you do not need them to define who you are. For someone whose identity is built entirely on the need to be worshipped or obeyed, this is intolerable. You are, in essence, holding up a mirror, but it's not reflecting their idealized self. It's reflecting reality. And reality, for a narcissist, is something to be avoided at all costs. Your ability to say no, to disagree calmly, to walk away without rage or apology, these are all signals that you are not under their control. They might accuse you of being selfish, cold, or ungrateful, but what they are really expressing is fear. Fear that the version of themselves they've spent years maintaining is starting to collapse because you no longer validate it. They cannot accept your strength because it renders them powerless, and powerlessness is their deepest fear. A narcissist world is hierarchical. Someone is always on top, and someone is always beneath. The idea that you could simply stand beside them as an equal, or worse, without them entirely, shatters their mental structure. Being sensitive doesn't mean being weak. It means being in tune with your inner world. It means having the courage to speak up when something doesn't sit right. Sensitivity is not a flaw, it's a human strength. It allows for connection, nuance, emotional depth. But in a relationship where sensitivity is mocked or criticized, those qualities become liabilities. You're trained to believe that your emotional wiring is defective, when in truth, the defect lies in the unwillingness of your partner to engage with it. What often lies beneath the "you're too sensitive" remark is emotional immaturity. It's easier to deflect blame than to reflect on behavior. If something they said or did hurt you, it might require them to apologize, explain, or adjust. That takes vulnerability. It takes humility. But if a person isn't ready for that level of emotional responsibility, they'll deflect it back onto you. "You're too sensitive" becomes a defense mechanism, a way to avoid accountability by shifting the spotlight onto your supposed fragility. In time, this dynamic creates a relationship where only one person's emotional needs are allowed to exist. Her reactions are valid, yours are overreactions. Her concerns deserve attention, yours are dismissed. And once that imbalance takes root, resentment grows quietly beneath the surface. You stop bringing things up. You bottle your discomfort. You begin to edit yourself, not out of consideration, but out of fear. That's not respect. That's quiet resignation. A healthy relationship honors emotional honesty. It creates space for both people to feel, express, and explore without fear of ridicule. When a woman weaponizes your sensitivity, she's telling you, consciously or not, that her comfort is more important than your truth. And the longer you tolerate that, the more disconnected from yourself you become. Emotional connection cannot exist where emotional dismissal is the norm. Sensitivity is not your weakness. It's your warning signal, and when it's ignored, the damage goes deeper than silence. It touches your sense of worth. It's a demand for control. And the moment love becomes a lever, the relationship stops being safe.